Well, welcome everybody to the CCC podcast from a little bit of a different location.
Yeah, a little bit.
If you're
We're
watching,
still in the building.
We're in the building. If you're watching us, we are not on the stage like we usually shoot from. We are sitting out here in the foyer.
Yeah.
That's not the proper way to say that.
Yeah.
Lobby.
The lobby out here.
Because we're getting ready for in-person services.
We're getting ready for in-person.
We're getting the
So-
room ready and
Yes.
prepped for people.
Spread apart.
Sanitize and spread out.
Sanitize and spread apart.
Yes. So
They knew we could not be involved in the sanitation cleaning process, so we had to be moved
no,
out.
we're a part of it. It's just getting us out.
Yeah.
getting
That is
us out of there.
sanitizing,
Yeah,
getting
that's
rid of
right.
us.
That's
So,
right.
but yeah, but we're going to talk about that in just a few moments. We're going to jump right into talking about what's coming this weekend and reminding you guys of how that whole thing is going to go. But you know, the truth is, as we were talking before we started recording, was that it would probably be a tone deaf thing to do if we did not acknowledge what's going on in our world right now. For the past several weeks, the biggest thing in our world has been the virus and a pandemic and a lockdown, and we've talked about that. But now, just in the past few nights, it's changed, and we just felt like it would make sense for us to talk about that, give a little bit of a perspective on that. So let's get into it. What are you guys' first thoughts on all of the tension, the racial tension that we're seeing in our country right now?
Well, you know, and it's not going to be a surprise to anybody who knows me. My first reaction when I heard about the guy's death, anger. I mean, anger is my default.
Yeah.
I have a lot of anger about things, and when injustice particularly, and then just a lot of confusion, frustration. You know, I sit and think, and you know, I'm 60 years old, and I think back in 1992, we had, you know, riots in Los Angeles, and Rodney King gets beaten. And that's on TV, and we have riots, and those were a big deal. And I think, wow, that's never been like that before. But then I go, well, no, that's not true. In my lifetime, it's happened a bunch of times, all the way back to when, you know, I grew up within easy driving distance of where Dr. King got shot. I mean, during the time, I remember the morning when some of the guys who we were unloading some hay in a barn, and the guys on the truck, you know, told me Dr. King had been shot. I didn't even, I was a kid. I didn't really even know who that was, to be honest with you, too much. And, you know, you have the Watts riots that start in 65. You have so it's just been this continual thing. And so, you know.
And for me, I think every time, surely we're done. Yeah. Surely that's going to be the last thing, and it just never seems to be.
And you know, I don't want to just gloss over it in that often people act like, you know, those all had the same cause. When I go back through all of the kind of thing, I'm talking about police brutality toward the African American community in all of those situations. Back to when I was a little boy, and people have held up Dr. King, you know, and he didn't have violent protests. Well, let's be clear, the protests were pretty violent because the police made them violent. Sure. He did not intend to set out to make them violent. And so it's just hard when you get to be my age and you know, you think that, well, you just think you'd be further along. You just think you'd be at some point. And I mean, from my side, I mean, my race has been in power the whole stinking time. And we just keep going back to this. And I don't believe all police are bad. I don't believe that.
Absolutely not.
And as I said to a friend of mine the other day, it's like when there have been preachers that do terrible things. I don't like people branding me with all that. It's my responsibility to stand up and say, hey, I know it. I know it. Yeah, I call them out too.
Absolutely.
And so when people say, hey, are there white people that are racist? Yeah. And for me to act like just because you point that out that somehow you're calling me racist, I just wear the fact that unfortunately there are people, and I have to call it out and help that to end. So, you know, I watched. I could go on to. I watched this morning. The New York Times had put together the body cam. I mean, not body cam, but footage outside the thing, the whole George King thing, and they've spliced it together from bystander photos to things from other shops that are around, and you watch the whole thing take place from the moment that the clerks come out of the store to first confront him. And I watched this man laying on the ground calling for his mom. Mm-hmm. And I just can't understand, how does it get to that? How does it get to a place like that happens? And I just don't understand. But then, thankfully, I know who does, and Jesus understands. Jesus, we think about him being crucified and bleeding to death, but Jesus suffocated.
Yeah.
That's what
that's
crucifixion
right. That's
happened.
right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And on the cross, he said, hey, there's my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's what I think. I was really, really mad.
Yeah.
And then just really sad. Sad.
Yeah. I told you guys that I was I could just say a lot of the same things you did. I won't just go back over it, but this weekend, and I just felt God had brought this to my mind, is I started really thinking about the black men in my life that I know, and just wondering, trying to think what it would feel like to see this through their eyes. I can't, but I felt as if I needed to try and do that, just because I love them, and I would hope that they would do the same for me. Because I think that's what love calls me to do, is to try to feel and try to empathize as best as I can, knowing that I can't completely do that. And it led me to reach out to some of them and just say, man, I don't know how you must be feeling, but I know it's a difficult thing for you, and I'd love to hear about it if you want to talk to me about it, or if I can do something, I want to be there to do something, because I just didn't know what else to say or do, because you feel so helpless. Yeah. You want to make some good come out of it. You want to fix, that's my nature. I want to fix something, but I don't know what to do to fix it. So, I don't know, Nathan, how much you want to talk about this, but we were just talking before we recorded how your perspective from this being A, of a younger generation, but B, someone who's in the process of adopting some children of color, and how that goes through your mind and your family.
Yeah, I think, I've been very affected over, I think when I was growing up, I would have been 2 or 3 when the Rodney King thing happened. So I don't really remember any of that. And it felt like, and maybe this was kind of a sheltered childhood, I didn't see as much about it over the coming years. But then probably I had graduated high school, I think, when Trayvon Martin was killed. And it feels like from that point on, which kind of started the Black Lives Matter movement in response to that and a lot of other things, that there were a lot of more televised killings of young men and women of color after that. And I remember kind of realizing in that moment that I had grown up pretty close to a couple of good friends of mine who were men of color. And the whole time we were friends, they tried to tell me, I feel like you and the rest of the guys in our group, who were mainly white men, that I'm not quite as close to y'all as y'all are to one another. And I remember very much thinking at the time, as probably everybody does, no, you're wrong. You're just seeing it that way. That's not, no one thinks of it differently. And then I remember when all of this stuff kind of started happening, 2008, 2009, when everything started coming, really having a moment of repentance with God, of realizing I think I probably did, and I was unaware of it. And I think like many white people in our country, I personally never felt like I had done anything intentionally racist, that I had never intentionally chosen to hate another person or to treat anyone differently, but realizing that, as you said, I can't ever understand something from someone else's perspective, that there were things unintentionally on my part, and maybe hidden things in my mind that I didn't know about. And so all that stuff was very emotional for me. And so this is not, like both of them said, this is not the first time any of this has been emotional for me, but it always has been from a maybe third person perspective of there are people in my life that I know who are I hate this for them, and maybe even as many of us do, sometimes feeling guilt over things. But as you just said, over the past year, Jennifer and I have been, we have 3 girls in our home right now who we are fostering, and hopefully soon we'll be adopting. And all 3 are young girls of color. And realizing in this particular case, because I may be wrong, this may be the first one since they've been in our home that has been as publicly televised, realizing that my wife and I have neglected to speak to them about things that they need to know for their lives, and so unfortunately that they have to know for their lives, and how ill-equipped I am to do that. Not that anyone is equipped for it, but we've been trying to have conversations over the past weekend to even introduce to them the idea that because they're so young, they've not had a lot of firsthand experience with anything racially based in their life. And so the idea that they could even understand that people might think of them differently or even ever want to do harm to them because of the color of their skin or because of the way they look or because of ideas people have on people who look like them. It's heartbreaking to me. It was so hard for us to even breach. And then because we have a biological daughter in our home, like even explaining to them the differences that she won't ever experience necessarily what they experience. And internally watching as one of my daughters, I don't know what went in her head. She's very private in the way that she thinks, but watching her work through the fact that her and one of her sisters, because they see each other they're just sisters.
Yeah.
That for some reason there's now this division among us. It was the first time it ever been brought to their minds, and moving past that to realizing I have to, as you mentioned, I have to speak about I have a responsibility to them to speak on it, because what would be horrible for me is if they grew up, and as they probably will at some point, have a act of some kind of racial discrimination, injustice on their life, and they will feel it. And for them, and it would be someone most likely who looks like me. For them not to know my dad spoke about this, he was angry about it, he thought it was wrong. And then, as you said, I have many friends in my life currently who are men and women of color, and for them to not hear me speak about it,
Yes.
what would they think that I think about it? And so it's been a very emotional weekend for me personally, but then also in people in my life. And so, and like Ed said so well, I mean, it breaks the heart of God. And
Yes.
just thinking it's something that hurts many of us, but what he must feel every day, because there are so many unheard and unseen things for the majority of the public that are happening that don't get caught on camera, and that we just don't know.
It was, for me, I don't think, a coincidence that I think late last week in my discipleship group, I read Galatians. And it reminded me, and they laugh because they know which passage I'm talking about, but if you don't, what we know from history was the first, what's known as egalitarian statement in all of history was written into the Bible. When Paul said, there is neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female, slave nor free, all are one in Christ Jesus. We forget how revolutionary that statement was.
Sure.
And also how much work we still have to do in our world to make it so.
Yeah.
Because he's painting, we talk about it a lot in this podcast, he's painting a picture of the kingdom of God, the way it ought to be, the way it was designed to be. And we as kingdom bringers, we still got work to do.
Yeah. That's the big thing for me as well. You know, I've been leading a long time, and I feel culpable in some way that I haven't made a bigger difference. That's the way it hit me at some point. You know, to just feel bad about it and to not have done something. And I don't mean just personally. I mean to lead people to do something. And so, we're sitting underneath this thing. Love everyone always. And I don't know whether you can see it on there or not, but if you've been in the campus here, it's right there on that wall. And I think a lot of us think that just means I don't hold any ill will. And in general, I have positive feelings toward people, but it doesn't. Love means I direct my will toward the good of the other. I direct my will. I take my will and I direct it toward the good of the thing that I love. And if I'm going to love everybody always, I have to look at problems and go, I'm going to direct my will toward this problem in whatever way I can. And
well, and in particular, Jesus makes all these clarifying statements throughout his, and I shouldn't say statements, he often is telling stories to clarify over and over again that the greatest expression of that love for everyone is often it's maybe love your enemies, but often what he gets to is those who are most vulnerable in society, those who are most under oppression or under some kind of poverty or under some kind of injustice.
stand up for the oppressed.
Yeah, that somebody that you would step in, and the very famous one we've used, we've spoken on many times in our church when we do a Do Something campaign about Jesus says what you do for whenever you've clothed someone who needed clothing, whenever you've visited someone in prison, whenever you've done these things. And that has to apply as well to our brothers and sisters of color who are facing this systemic injustice that we've all talked about has not gone away. And for us not to speak about that and be about that work, our Father is about that work, and he's in the middle of it.
And for each of us to figure out, and for us as a church, whatever that means, to figure out how can we be the ones to walk across the racial divide? I mean, how can we be the first to reach a hand out and say, hey, I'm not just passively for you and I'm okay with you doing well and I don't want to do anything to harm you, but how can I actively be for you?
Yes.
How can I be for you?
Yep.
Because I have power because that's the country we live
That's right.
in.
Yes.
I am in the majority. And I should be wielding my power for the good of those that God loves and all the people that God loves. And
well, and we have precedents within the Bible of this happening over and over again, where you have the early church, and because you mentioned the verse in Galatians, but this was a constant. Racial issues were a constant problem in the first church because it's the first time anyone has done this. And one of the very first issue that really causes almost a split in the church is this issue over Jews and non-Jews. And there was a religious aspect around it, but there was so much of it that was ethnic and racial because they have this issue over circumcision. And if you're non-Jewish, you got to be, and really what it is we want you to come and do our customs. Why can't you be more like us?
And even in that situation, because they all had done the Jewish part, these were Greek Gentile people who had grown up and they had adopted the Jewish culture. They were in Jerusalem, but you're still not quite like us.
That's right.
You have done everything you could do, but you're not quite like us.
Yeah.
Well, and in the case of the early church, the majority of the early church were these Jewish believers because Jesus was Jewish, so his first followers were Jewish, and it was the people who held the most power in the church that were willing to say, hey, I know we have all of these privileges as the people who have the most, and we could just make this rule, but it's Paul and these guys who step in and go, hey, you know what? I get that it makes us uncomfortable, and we've never had to be around non-Jews before, and it's been tough because even the food thing, which everyone kind of makes jokes about of like, thank God they could finally eat bacon, but for them it was disgusting. I mean, it was like
it'd be no different than if somebody came to us, and there are cultures that do this and said, hey, we need to eat dog now.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, in our country, the amount of people who would rise up, but that's completely normal in parts of our world.
Well, and the amount, even in our culture, the amount of jokes around that are based around race, the idea of all those kind of things. And so for them, it was a heavy thing, but him being willing to say at different times, hey, the dietary laws aren't the same. And what they're ultimately saying is we got to lay down some of the things that make us uncomfortable to have conversations that matter, but also to open up to people who are not like us. And there's so much of that, as you just said, as people who hold power that we just have to be aware of, and we have to be willing to say, yeah, this might make me uncomfortable, or I don't even want to talk about that because I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I feel every time I have to make a post or have to talk to a friend, the amount of sweat that goes into the words that I'm going to say, and not because I'm so concerned what everyone thinks, because I don't want to do damage and I don't know. And there's a part of me that goes, you know what, just don't say anything. Other people are smarter and they're going to say better things than you can say.
But that's not the answer either.
No, it's not. Right.
And I think you alluded to this earlier. Silence. When you don't say anything, you leave a space for people to interpret what you think or what you believe. And if I truly love you, I don't ever want to leave a space for you to interpret wrongly what I feel towards you. I need to move into that space, speak through it, and say, no, here's where I stand. Here's what I think, and I do love you. And I may not do it all right, and I may not understand all that I should, but I want to.
Yeah, the benefit of speaking, even if I don't say it all right, and I let you know that I love you, if we start talking, you can help me correct myself.
That's
right.
You can say, hey, man, that wasn't exactly right, or hey, this is where that's off, and you and I can have a dialogue. And if we're really for each other, we can begin to work things out. But me sitting quietly, it does feel like I'm passively against you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I hadn't planned any of this, and I don't have any permission on this. This is just me.
Go ahead.
But we are blessed to have people of color in Community Christian, you know, and we're digital and online. And I feel like I haven't always done as much as I. So if there are things that we are doing that are hindering you from fully experiencing the body of Christ and ways that we can reach out and we can help you, I want to know.
We do. That's right.
I want to know. I want you to personally reach out to me or anybody. I want the message. I want to know. And we want to be what the kingdom of God should be, where there is no male or female, there is no black nor white, there is no Hispanic, and there's none of that. We are the representation. Hey, one day in heaven, we're all going to be worshiping around the throne together. Our job is to bring the kingdom now.
Yes.
We should be praying every day. What happens in heaven, let it happen here, at least in the church. We become a little outpost. And so, hey, we're at a place, we're sort of relaunching because we're opening back up after being closed. Let's see if we can't get it right. So if there are things we're doing that aren't right, hey, let us know. Help us understand.
Or just things we could do better. We want to we just want to do better.
We just want to do better.
That's right. And no matter what you say to us, it will be received with love and patience. It will not be rejected.
That's for sure.
We will not do that. So, all right. We'll just close it up there. I wish we could do more, but that's enough for today. And so let's talk about, you just mentioned it, Ed. Let's give a little bit of an update on where we are in getting back to the building. We have we announced on this venue that it's this Sunday? Or did I just do that?
This coming Sunday, if you don't watch the other thing. And I just say to you again, if we know we're sending it out to everybody we have an email address for or a text message. I hear from people go, well, I don't read those. Well, I can't help you then.
You need to read it.
I don't know what to do. We are opening this Sunday, reopening. It's the same thing we've been saying. I get totally why some people won't be able to come and probably shouldn't come. If you're in categories where it's just you need to protect yourself or protect people you're trying to protect or any of those kind of things where you just don't feel it's time yet, hey, we're good with that. You're still a part of us, and we are going to still be online. In fact, we've been making some changes, and I don't know if y'all have noticed that in the online thing. This week will be a whole nother evolution of that, and we will continue to do that. We're trying to serve that particular audience. In fact, the way we see it now is we have an online campus, and we're going to have an in-person. We've all been online. It's just that some of us, like we were at Ashley Park and at Sharpsburg now, some of us are going to be online, and some of us are going to be in person. And the in-person thing, it starts this Sunday at 9:30 and 11. Tickets, this is Wednesday the 3rd today. Is that
if you're watching this when it drops, this will be when the Wednesday the tickets go out.
Wednesday the 3rd is when this drops, we hope. And there will also be email that you're getting that day that will tell you about the tickets and the links that you need. And one of the things I just say to you is, you really do need to take the ticket thing seriously.
Yes.
We're trying to do everything we can because there's nothing in what the governors ask us to do that violates the Bible. So we want to try to do what we can to honor that. And so it's really important to us, not because there's no money involved, there's no exclusion of anybody involved, but we just need to be able to know that we're preparing. So make sure you bring your ticket.
Bring your ticket.
Make sure you get your ticket and that you have it with you. There's a way you can just bring it on your phone and your email. It's going to get sent to you. So just bring that with you on your phone. We're going to have a way to do that. 9:30 and then 11 o'clock, we will also be offering children's services at that time so that your kids can go to something age appropriate for them, 5th grade and under.
Yep.
And so you'll need to get tickets for them and that. And it'll all be sort of self-explanatory. I do want to say one other thing that we've been learning. I know I'm just running on here a little bit.
That's okay.
I'm trying to get the message out as often as we can. Hey, let's all be loving when we come and expecting that it's going to be fun to be back together for those who come, but that there's all going to be all different kinds of comfort levels.
That's right.
And there's going to be all different kinds of things that will need to be different, and let's just all grant a lot of grace. One of the things I do want to say to you is, hey, bathrooms in every one of the venues, when you think about, you hear about these big groups coming, they're a challenge for us to get them prepared and to have them re-prepared in the way that we want to. So we're asking, don't load up on coffee or anything else before you come. And we're asking that if you can, bathrooms be as a really I need to go to the bathroom kind of experience. Not
Enough
just,
said, Ed. Enough said.
not just, I'm tired of talking to Jason and I need to go, oh, I'm going to the bathroom.
That might be an emergency, though. You might really have to get away from Jason.
Is that why people walk away from me when we're talking?
When people say,
People
oh,
always-
man, I got to go to the bathroom before the service, I'm just saying, we're not going to bar anybody. There's not going to be any kind of way to do it, but we're just, it's really difficult to meet all the standards we want, and just we'd like to try to,
Yes.
emergency only.
That's right. You decide what the
I don't want to
emergency
say
is.
anything. You get to decide
You get
what
to
that
decide.
is.
That's right.
Okay. Enough about that. Tomorrow.
Or today, depending
Today,
on
if you're watching it.
Today.
Wednesday.
And please get your tickets because, again, there is a limited number. But I want to say, if you want to come because that will let us know how many other services we need to do. Our staff is committed, and
right.
we have volunteers
That's right.
that are willing to help. We want to get as many people as who are wanting to, but we're going to do it socially distanced. So we're willing to have as many services at different times as we need to have to make that happen. And we're going to be online, and it's going to be different, and that's going to be cool too. So
Everything's going to be different.
everything's going to be different.
Just
9:30 and 11. That's different.
That is.
The only thing that's staying the same this week is online's at 10:30.
Okay.
Online is still at 10:30.
Okay. All right. Enough said about that.
Enough about that.
Enough said about that. All right. We're going to have to make this brief, but can we have a quick just thought or two on Sunday's message?
I had, and I don't know who's asking the questions or what we need to bring up on this. One of the things that I really loved, I love the series we're talking about just because I really do think faith and the way we think about it is so badly misunderstood. It does, your analogy of Star Wars and the Force is really the way I think people tend to think of it. That they tend to think of it. If I just believe, if I could just believe, they wouldn't say it this way, but it's almost like it gives me power over God.
Oh, yeah.
God's the power of the universe, but if I could just believe, I can use that power for my benefit. I can get him in a bind, and he has to do what I want to do.
It's like I'm wanting him to be on my side, and the thing that we don't get is he already is.
Yeah. One, that's the one thing. The second thing I have said to people is, it's not much of a God that you can overpower.
True.
Yeah.
True.
How weak does your God have to be that you can overpower him?
Yeah. I'd be afraid of that one because if he listens to you, I don't,
Yeah, I know.
whoever you is, I don't do this
'cause
as a general you.
I know there's some people who don't like me. I don't want them
That's right.
to be able to overpower
please don't listen to them.
who does like me.
That's right. I'm telling you, how many people have we had pray against us in our lifetime? And we're so thankful that God didn't listen.
He didn't listen.
They didn't have enough faith or whatever.
Exactly.
That's a joke. But
That was a part I thought, even if there had been nothing else, I thought that was a really, really important part that I hope people got.
yeah.
Faith is not a power.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and that the power is not in me, the power is in God.
Right.
And that, because I think there's so much of that in all of us, that there is this feeling of like, man, if I just tried harder, or if I just done this, man, that would have gone better in my life. And I think it's really hard for us. I was just talking to some people this week about the idea of accepting that ultimately what grace is, and I'm talking about the Sunday, so I don't want to get too much into it, but
Yeah.
the idea that grace is ultimately the power of God to do for me what I can't do. And we often think of grace as forgiveness of sins. And obviously, forgiveness of sins is a part of grace because I can't do that for myself. But ultimately, what grace is it's God working in my life and to empower me sometimes to do things that I could not do on my own, which means me being in a position constantly of saying, no, I am weak and I can't do this on my own. It enables God to then work through me at that point, because there's a point of, but it's the reverse of what everyone else thinks is I have to be, if I just have super strong faith, and it's if I'm strong and have so much belief, then God can do all this stuff, and otherwise nothing's going to happen. But really, it is this place of, and I think it's why often people who are in 12-step programs see so much life change, because when you get to a point where you say, I have to release control, and really what it's saying is, I can't do this on my own.
12 steps, cancer people,
Sure.
when you finally get to when
the
there
end of
comes a
yourself.
problem and you have believed as much as you can, and then the door is still there, and you finally go, I got nothing else I can do. I think I'm going to really, God, whatever you decide to do. And then they go, and then things began to happen because
Yeah.
But not necessarily the situation
no,
changed.
not necessarily the
Or
thing
what
they
I
want.
wanted to see happen.
No. Yeah.
Something good came, but it was not even the good I thought.
Faith in God is powerful because God is powerful.
Yes.
Right.
Faith in God is very powerful in whatever situation I'm in. May not even go the way I want it to, because He's got a place He's getting the world, and I'm a
Right.
part of that.
Well, and that's the
I'm
part
a
of the
part that.
definition you gave of faith is confidence that God is who He says He is, and that first part is huge. Like I have to
is.
get clear: who is God? Who did He say He was? Not because I hear so many people in the conversations I have, because I talk to so many young people and a lot of people who didn't grow up in church, and the kind of conversation. And the amount of times I know you guys hear this too is, well, if there is a God, then He must be, or if there is a God, then He should be, or if there is a God, then
Yeah.
He would.
Or my God does this.
Right.
Okay.
The idea that if there is a God, I get to impose must and should and would means He's not God, He's something I've created.
Yes.
The fact that there is a God means I have to know who He says He is, which is huge, and then He's going to do everything He promised to do, which is what we get to this week in
That's
our
what you're gonna
sermon.
talk
Yeah,
about.
is what did He promise? But I think on the part that you got to in your part is when I fully relinquish the control and say, I'm just going to trust you. There is power that comes through that, but the power is not me. Like it's not a force that, or it's not even it's really, I'm opening myself up to God do something. I'm not going to be in control of what it is.
Yep.
Maybe you're going to do it in me. Maybe you're going to do it outside of me. Maybe it is going to be something in my circumstance, but I don't get to be in control of what that is. And I also thought the part that you said, and maybe we can talk about this, of the idea of it's still okay, because I think there's kind of a flip-flop back and forth on this where some people are, I gotta claim it, right? I gotta say it
Yeah.
and believe it's gonna happen. But then there's this other part of us that goes, well, if I don't get to be in control, I just shouldn't even talk to God.
No,
about
He'll
these
just
things.
do whatever He wants to do, and
right.
I don't need to even tell Him anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But there is this part of you talk about bring your hopes before God, of
Yes.
that idea of hope of, I hope you'll do this. And Jesus certainly did that. I tap in a little bit this week on that Jesus also got a no from God.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus comes to God and says, please take this cup of suffering from me. And then he says, if your will,
your
not
will be
my
done.
own. But if you look at that truly, Jesus said, will you do this? And God said, no.
Nope.
You know what I mean?
Who had more faith than Jesus?
Exactly. And so you get to a place and he moves into this. So anyway, going back to your thing about hopes, how does that all play into this of God, you can do whatever you want, like Jesus, right? Your will. I'm acknowledging it's your will, but I do hope. You know what I mean? So can we talk about that? What does that look like practically? What does...
Well, it forces me, if I live in that, it forces me to place my hopes in their proper place. Because, like you said earlier, my hope is not God's promise. And so I live in where I'm supposed to be. I'm here. God is greater. And that song we sung, I thought was great. You know, your ways are higher than mine.
I love that song.
Me too. And it reminds me that that's true. No matter how much I hope for things, and no matter how righteous it feels and how good I think my request is, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. There's a lot I don't understand. And I need to be okay with that, because I've got a Father who's above me, and he's got nothing but good in his heart and his thoughts for me. And I trust in that.
Which is the illustration you used, and I was going to say you ought to talk about it that way, because I thought that was also great of a parent and a kid.
Right. Childlike faith. In
Childlike
essence.
faith is really just me getting to the place, and all of us have had to say no to our kids.
Sure.
Yeah.
And don't even feel bad.
You better, or you don't love them.
Right.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Yes.
So, but there is a sweetness to, and it's been so long, but I see it even with my grandchildren now, of they trust enough of they ask you everything,
Yes.
even though you laugh at it because you go, oh, no, I'm never doing that.
Yeah.
But you don't want them to stop asking. When they stop asking, you know you lost something.
True.
Something's gone that you wish you could get back. Just this thought of, well, my dad could do anything. He
Yeah.
can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And then every now and then,
He does.
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
And that's great, you know? So,
Well, and sometimes on things that before you hadn't even thought, oh, I'm going to do that. Like your child comes, goes, Dad, can we? I've had this happen lots of times. Maybe this is just me. My child comes, goes, Dad, I want ice cream today.
Yeah.
And I had in my head, we're not having ice cream today. But they come to me and then they say it, and I go, well, ice cream does sound good. You know, and then we go and have fun. And I think that's the kind of conversation. It's not anything that's outside my nature. My daughter didn't come and say, Dad, I think we should shoot someone today. And I go,
Yeah.
well, I wasn't going to do that, but
Yeah.
you asked. You know, but there is a level to that God is conversational with us. I remember reading, I think it's in the Divine Conspiracy, once again, your Dallas Willard thing for today, where he talks
that's
about...
another recurring thing.
That Dallas moment.
Yeah. We need a little graphic for that, producer Joel. We need a little graphic. He's got a thumbs up on that.
Dallas
So.
Willard.
Thought of the
Dallas
day.
Willard, Dallas Willard quote and a discipleship mention.
Yes. I
come
already got that one.
You
in,
already
by the
did
way.
that one.
So,
But yeah, I think he talked about after a conference or something he had done, a couple came up to him and they were just talking, and they were talking about how their son was starting a new business and how they were just worried, you know, because new businesses fail and all that kind of stuff. And he says, well, have you prayed about it? And they said, well, it didn't feel holy enough to pray about.
Yeah.
And I've had those
Yeah.
moments where I'm
yeah.
well, even because I've made fun of people when they pray before a game or something. It's like, well, maybe they're praying before the game. But this idea that he said, well, but if it matters to you, don't you think it matters to God?
Sure.
Like that, because it matters to you. And it doesn't mean that he's suddenly going to go, now you're a millionaire. But you also don't know that he doesn't go, okay, that's fine. Let's
Yeah.
get you some success on that part. You never know. And it's part of, you said, of this conversational father-son, father-daughter relationship where you just go, God, what about this today? And it's part of him training us to, as I've mentioned before, and Dallas says this too, of training me to become the kind of person he can trust to do what I want to do. That sometimes when I get a no from God, or I get a, you know, people talk all the time about no or not now or any of this.
which I'm going to talk about in 2 weeks.
Oh, yes, he's got coming up in a couple weeks. But there's a level to that if I'm observant of it, I don't just, because I try to do this, once again, with my kids. They'll come and they'll say no, and then I'm sure y'all had this experience. You want to explain why the no, but they go, ugh, and they walk away and they won't listen to the rest. And I go, oh, but there was a training moment there. I could have explained to you why the not now. Why is it that my 7-year-old can't drive a car? You know, one day I do want you
Good
to
reason.
drive a car, but there's a reason for the not now.
Yeah.
And if we're observant of that, God actually begins to train us some.
Well, and it trains me in my prayer life as well, because I guarantee you there were things that I was begging God for at 17 that I know now how to pray for that area of my life in a much
Right.
better way.
That's
you know,
right.
Like for instance, at 17, I might have been praying for God to get me a date. Right.
Yeah,
You know?
sure, yeah.
But I know now what that longing in me was. I learned from his training me.
Right.
And so now I look at what that longing is in me, and now I can pray better. I can pray more in accordance with his will. And so now he didn't change the circumstance necessarily, but he's changed me.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I've become more of who he meant for me to be.
Anyway, I thought it was really
So-
good. I
did
thought
too.
the whole
Yeah.
service, and you mentioned the song. I thought Joel and John did great on that song. I thought the
That
whole
was also
thing-
me.
Oh, that's right. That was Nathan this
Whoops.
week. I'm just,
I want the credit for it. I will say
I'm
this.
just so used to saying Joel
Yes.
and John.
I will say this: when you said y'all loved that song, producer Joel picked that
He did-
song.
he
so
did
good,
pick that
good,
out.
good job, producer Joel,
I
him
do
props.
now
picking that
remember
song.
it was you this week.
It
That's
was.
right.
It was.
And I will say, I think he picked the right version of that song. That's just an inside joke between me and Joel because there are several versions of that song, and we had about a 15-minute conversation about which version of the song, which usually ended me saying, "I don't care, let me know." So
now this
that's an
is-
inside joke just for me
This
and
is
Joel.
really inside. Everybody who knows Joel knows every conversation with Joel is a 15-minute conversation about the multiple possibilities that
He
exist.
just wants to get it right, and he got it right. But next time you could get it wrong. We maybe should have had a 30-minute conversation about it.
Poor Joel. He can't. He doesn't have a mic.
That was just the opportunity for Nathan to put more angst in young
That's
Joel's
right. I just
head
want him to
about it.
keep
He
thinking
could have
about it.
thought about it
You
longer.
could have gotten
right.
it wrong,
All
but you got
right.
it right that one time.
Okay. All right. Do we have time? Nah. I think
You're going to call it?
I'm going to call it because I have something else. It was the fun part of the ending. but
Well,
I'm
I
gonna-
think we just had
We had a
fun
little
with Joel.
fun at
we had
Joel's
fun with
expense.
Joel.
We just-
So I'm going to save
It
it for
wasn't
next
at his
week.
expense.
So yeah. So I'll hang on
Yeah,
to this.
he had fun with that too. He had a lot of fun with
He's
that.
over there shaking his head. No, I did not. So all right. Well,
Joel's right over here today.
Yeah, he's
He
in
is
the room.
Almost in the room.
He
right
invites this by being in the room.
okay. Well, all right. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you haven't. Watch for your ticket link coming up. And if
Yeah.
you don't get one, you miss it, send us an email. Let
there.
us know.
Yeah, please.
And
you
please
want
send
one,
us
let us know.
questions. We need
Send
to-
us
we need to have
questions in the description.
Don't wait until Sunday to let us know you didn't get a ticket link.
True.
Yes.
If you don't get something soon, reach out to us.
us
Call
know.
us on the phone. Get in touch with us. We will make sure if you want to be here in person,
can be
that
here.
you can be here.
And if you don't want to, stay home.
Stay home, but we
Stay
have
home, yeah.
online 10:30. It's going to be awesome.
All right.
Yep.
See ya next
See ya.
week.
Bye.